Hi, my name is Dr. Mike DeBoard. I'm the president and founder of B3 Sciences, and in this exciting 30-minute presentation, I'm going to share with you an athletic performance breakthrough that's already being seen in world and USA Olympic athletes, and now amateur, professional, recreational, even kids and teenagers are going to be able to tap into this exciting breakthrough. I'm Dr. Mike DeBoard, a former sports physician, one of the top BFR experts here in the United States. I want to give a great recognition to who I believe is the top BFR expert for athletic performance in the entire world. That's Dr. Jim Strayed-Gunderson, one of our top Olympic team doctors who developed the B3 Bands and really perfected BFR in the USA Olympic athletes. And BFR, or blood flow restriction training, is not new in Japan. It's been around for 50 years. Over 500,000 sessions per day are now being conducted. And it's been proven many years ago in their world elite athletes. And as I mentioned, Dr. Jim Strayed-Gunderson perfected in our USA Olympic athletes. And a little over a year ago, I started a company to take this out to people who exercise, from elite level athletes down to people who will just go for a walk. And now we have close to 7,000 people using the bands and getting profound results that we're going to talk about. And these results are for kids and teenagers who are already active. Maybe they're participating in sports. High school and collegiate athletes who are looking for an edge. Elite, like Olympic and pro level athletes. Recreational athletes, like all the pickleball players and golfers and tennis people in the world. And even people who are suffering from injury and rehab are seeing profound results. Let's get right into it. We all know the typical training routine that's needed for adaptation. We know that we either need to lift heavy weights or do vigorous aerobic conditioning or explosion speed or jump training. When we do this high intensity training, we create a fatigue in our body or our muscles that results in a growth hormone release. I want you to pay attention to that 30%, because I call that the depth of fatigue. We will come back to that. The B3 bands, or BFR bands, are a breakthrough. We talked about Japan and proven in Olympic athletes, and now 7,000 people using it. Why is it so profound? Well, as you learn in this presentation, it's proven to promote more growth hormone release, more human performance results. It's even proven to help improve pain and recovery, and best of all, athletes looking for an edge or a competitive edge, performance is increasing significantly. So how do the bands work? Well, if you look at these athletes here, they've got the bands on their arms and legs, and you simply pump them up. It doesn't cut off blood flow. It simply slows down oxygen into the working muscles. Now, as the muscles have less oxygen to work with, they're going to fatigue deeper. What do you feel? You feel this pump or burn, which typically takes a lot more work. It comes really fast. One of the profound things that happens that we will talk about is you're able to get a complete recruitment across the motor unit. We'll talk about that. But here's really the simplest form of what it's doing for you as an athlete. It is creating a deeper fatigue than most athletes have ever experienced in their entire life. And when you get deeper fatigue, the body's adaptation, the body's response is stronger. We're going to talk about that 20% number over there as it relates to a deeper fatigue. Let's look at a typical athlete workout. This is middle-aged athletes doing biceps curls. And when they fatigue through the traditional 3 sets of 8, they're typically getting down to a oxygen level in their muscles of 30%. Now, this is where most athletes get to, and this results in a small growth hormone release. What happens when they put the bands on? These same group of men are now lifting 50% less weight, but look what happens to their depth of fatigue. That's where I talk about the 20% number. These men are hitting a depth of fatigue or an oxygen deficit, or what we call a metabolic failure, that most athletes have never experienced in their life. It's deeper. It creates more systemic response out of the body. Adaptation is stronger. and performance increases. Now, before we get into the 4 profound things that happen with BFR, I want to share with you a study done on 12,000 people, 32,000 sessions studying BFR, and I'll quote for you the study. BFR training is a safe mode of exercise for healthy people and can be applied to persons with various kinds of physical conditions, including cerebrovascular diseases, orthopedic diseases, obesity, cardiac diseases, neuromuscular diseases, diabetes, hypertension, and respiratory disease. In this study, and through all the other studies I've seen, there's no increased risk, especially in athletes, with doing BFR over normal, vigorous exercise. So as we talk about athletes through this presentation, we're going to talk about every different type of athlete that can potentially benefit, even 8 and 9-year-old kids in the house who are just starting to play sports. And this is the 4 profound things you're going to learn in this presentation that are going to change the game for every single athlete. Number 1, BFR training is less load on the body and less pain or less aggravation of nagging injuries, and you realize a faster recovery. Next, you're going to get a quicker and bigger release of nitric oxide. You know that warmed up pump feeling you feel? That's profoundly beneficial to an athlete. Next, this is something new you're probably going to learn as an athlete coach or trainer. You're going to get a more complete and then deeper muscle fiber recruitment. And then after exercise, 15 to 30 minutes later, most athletes realize a bigger surge in growth hormone. Let's talk about less load and volume. This is a no-brainer. With weightlifting, we are lifting 50% of typical training rates. Most people lift a weight that is approximately 60% of 1 rep max. You simply reduce that in half. So this is perfect for people who are in season, people who have pain, people who have arthritis, people with artificial joints like me. You'll see me over there in the picture. The result is less pain, faster recovery, and a longer athletic career. Let's apply it to aerobic conditioning. Aerobic athletes, endurance, runners, bikers, swimmers typically reduce volumes up to 50% of their training. So imagine instead of running 30, 40, 50 miles per week, cutting that in half. The result is obvious. Less overuse injuries, faster recovery, longer athletic career. Let's see this in action in a few different athletes. This is Chad Dennis. He's been a collegiate NFL and XFL head strength coach. Here's a couple of his athletes who have nagging injuries. And the problem with these athletes is in these injuries, they can't lift heavy weights because they have to perform. So now they're lifting lighter loads. They're getting a quick release of nitric oxide, which we're going to talk about, but this is perfect for their injuries. They're not feeling the pain, and they're actually getting pain relief. So this is perfect for all these athletes who have nagging injuries or limitations, and it's even perfect for before competition or before game week. This will show you another application. This is Harry, a professional bodybuilder in his 30s. His goal is to preserve his body. Let's look at a couple videos here. Harry is doing lunges with half the weight that he typically lifts, and he's doing forearm curls. He feels the same deep pump, but he actually feels a deeper burn. He noticed his muscles were denser, yet he's lifting less weight. Huge benefit. He has little or no soreness the next day, and he's extending the life of his body. This is obviously very advantageous for athletes of any level, of any age. Next, let's talk about the second profound thing that happens, nitric oxide. Nitric oxide, many people know it as a pre-workout, but guess what? If you look down there to the bottom left, that's a picture of a blood vessel. Your arteries, the endothelial lining, contains this nitric oxide, and you can get a big release of it naturally, and it is rocket fuel for athletes. Many of you will feel that warm or pumped up or endorphin-like feeling. A big part of that is nitric oxide. Problem is, how do you get it? It typically takes a long amount of work or load of high intensity exercise, your body is responding to a metabolic change. Why is it giving you nitric oxide? To increase blood flow throughout the body to deal with this metabolic change. Now remember, the metabolic change comes faster and deeper when you put the bands on. And thus the result is you're going to feel this warmed up feeling much, much faster, which provides significant benefit. People who have some pain and stiffness, that is typically reduced or eliminated very quickly in your BFR session. But now nitric oxide, just like athletes are taking it as a pre-workout, is rocket fuel. And I want to encourage all athletes, the natural form of nitric oxide you will get will be profoundly more beneficial than these synthetic things you're putting in your body. So I want to encourage you, try BFR and see the results you have in power and endurance during your exercise versus these synthetic substances. In addition, when you get nitric oxide going, you can then get a deeper fatigue. And remember, depth of fatigue equals results. And nitric oxide actually promotes healing that we won't have a lot of time to talk about. But if you have pain or nagging injuries, make sure you watch my video on the pain-reducing effect of BFR. One of the big reasons is this nitric oxide. Let's apply this now. Here's Colin. He's a college football player. He trains with the bands and he warms up with the bands. Now what happened? He's hitting a deeper fatigue in his typical speed training, and then he can hit a deeper fatigue. A big part of this is the nitric oxide. Look at that speed time. He went from running a 4.640 to a 4.35 40-yard dash at the Ohio State football camp, earned him a significant amount of Division I scholarships. So we took a high-level athlete that was already trained and built D1 speed and produced for him Division I football scholarships. Let's go on to the next one here. This nitric oxide will significantly benefit people who run, bike, and swim. You see all levels of athletes there, triathletes, Olympians, senior Olympians down there in the bottom left corner, Dr. Dennis Brickner. People all say the same thing. I warm up faster. I perform better. I can get to a deeper fatigue, and then they adapt faster. And this adaptation in endurance athletes is better endurance, better VO2 max, and that translates to better performance in competition. And it's better performance for all athletes, power lifters, jumpers, volleyball players, endurance athletes, speed athletes, all across the board. More nitric oxide, better performance. Let's move on to what I feel is the most profound of the four things that are going to happen in your body. And I call this the training dilemma. And most athletes, most coaches, most trainers know the difference between slow twitch and fast twitch muscle fibers. Here's the problem. The average athlete cannot stimulate both motor units or both types of fibers. You either got to do explosion heavy weights or you got to do long-term endurance workouts, meaning they have to cross-train, which is time-consuming. It's hard on an athlete's body, and in many cases, they cannot do both. And this is exactly the dilemma they fall into. 99% of your athletes are underdeveloped on one type of these muscle fibers. Now, let me repeat this. When you have an athlete that you want to get to elite level performance, and they have an underdeveloped either slow twitch muscle fiber motor unit or fast twitch muscle fiber unit, you have not reached their peak performance levels, and you're going to be able to move the bar or move the finish line significantly on these athletes. Let's talk about the two different breakthroughs: strength training and weightlifting. Here's what happens. Let's go back to how we train with BFR. For weightlifting, we do 30% of one rep max. Obviously, that's a lighter weight. So if you look at the top representation up there, this is a guy that typically can weight train with 3 different 45-pound plates on each side. So as he's doing light weight, he's obviously only firing slow twitch muscle fibers. Now, for him to get to fast twitch and the elusive fast twitch type 2X or 2B, the power fibers, he's got to lift much heavier weights. Not with BFR. Here's what happens. He's doing set 1, light exercise, light weight, and he starts to feel the fatigue. Why? He has less oxygen coming into the muscle. We're able to exhaust the slow twitch muscle fibers that typically don't exhaust. And then the body does something really interesting. It crosses over, and to keep him contracting his leg muscles, it starts recruiting fast twitch muscle fibers, those valuable fibers that produce explosion, power, strength, all of the things we need in an athlete. But now, here's the second thing that happens that is profound. It's a deeper fast twitch recruitment. Look down there at the bottom. We still have a light weight on these athletes' shoulder as he's doing squats. But how many more reps is he going to be able to push out with a weight that's half as much? You just answered the question. Significantly more. He can push harder and deeper. And these power athletes, weightlifting athletes, experience a deeper fast twitch exhaustion or recruitment than most have ever experienced in their entire life. And the result is better results. And it's proven in studies. Here's a study on muscle growth done in Japan showing that muscle size changes occurred in 2 weeks. And this group of subjects that typically takes 3 to 4 months of high intensity exercise. Let me repeat this. Because of the depth of fatigue and the complete recruitment that occurs with BFR bands, this study showed changes that typically take 3 to 4 weeks were happening in 2 weeks. Next study on muscle strength. This study showed that light weights plus BFR equaled heavy weights for improving strength. And what I believe our weightlifters and powerlifters are going to see, because of more complete recruitment and deeper, I think we're going to see personal records set all across the board on people lifting weights from just average weightlifters to world elite powerlifters because of this dynamic. Now, let's switch over. Let's talk about the endurance level athletes and how this is a breakthrough for the runners and bikers and swimmers. Now, let's talk what happens when you don't have the BFR bands on. Well, you're in aerobic exercise. The fuel is predominantly oxygen. So as long as you've got blood coming into the muscles, you've got this long-term supply of oxygen, which means you can go for a bike ride for probably, you may go 30 hours, you may get 4 days before you drop if you've got enough fuel coming in. Point being, you cannot fully exhaust the slow twitch muscle fibers. There's too good a supply of oxygen. Put the bands on with BFR and you change the game. Here's what else happens in these aerobic athletes. These athletes typically can access type 2A fast twitch muscle fibers, but it's hard for them to go get the explosive type 2B because the motor unit is firing slow twitch muscle fibers. Put the bands on. What happens? As Judy will tell you, as she's on her bike right here, she has less oxygen coming in, so she very quickly, within 3, 4, 5 minutes, notices this deep burn or deoxygenation. The slow twitch muscles have exhausted themselves. They've choked or run out of fuel because of the reduced oxygen. And then the magic happens. The crossover recruitment of fast twitch muscle fibers, and then the deeper fast twitch firing or recruitment or exhaustion that typically does not happen in aerobic athletes, which means better results. And here's a study proving it. Control group, no bands. They did 3 weeks of cycle training. They saw no change in strength and size of their muscles. Why? They're not firing fast twitch type 2B, explosive fibers that are required to typically grow and improve strength. Next, they had a small change in VO2 max, which is typical, and a nice change in time to exhaustion, meaning if we put people on an exercise bike, we expect their endurance level to go up. Now look what happens with the group with the BFR bands. First of all, the VO2 max and time to exhaustion improvements were significantly higher. Why is this happening? This is better exhaustion of slow twitch muscle fibers, or complete exhaustion in athletes that typically can't do that. Why? Remember, blood supply, oxygen, slow twitch muscle fibers don't exhaust. Cut off the oxygen or reduce it, slow twitch muscle fibers exhaust, VO2 max and time to exhaustion goes up. But look at this. I've never seen this before, and I doubt any athlete or researchers ever seen anything like this. We, with the BFR bands on, like B3 bands, exhaust the slow twitch. Remember what happens. We now recruit the fast twitch muscle fibers, and much, much deeper in an activity of aerobics that typically doesn't do that. And what happens when you fatigue fast twitch type 2B? You get changes in strength and changes in muscle size. When's the last time you ever heard of somebody doing aerobic activity and their muscles getting bigger and stronger? It happens now, and it can happen to all your athletes with this slow twitch exhaustion, crossover recruitment, deep fast twitch fiber exhaustion. Here's a perfect real life example. Ingrid, a 3-time Olympian who does endurance training. She competes. Now, in her endurance training, when she implemented the bands, she didn't run or bike or swim with the bands. She only lifted with the bands. And I remember her calling me up and saying, you know, Dr. Mike, why did my endurance improve? I'm not running with the bands. Because, Ingrid and everybody listening, when you lift light weights with the bands, what type of fiber units are you recruiting first? Slow twitch. What are you doing to them? You're fatiguing them or exhausting them. What happens when you fatigue or exhaust slow twitch muscle fibers? Endurance and VO2 max goes up. So here's the crossover effect, I call it. An athlete doing an aerobic type activity with weightlifting that doesn't typically happen, and she's getting results in her endurance performance. Let's look at some other athletes. This is Scott Moore. Scott is a world pickleball champion. I'll fast forward the video here. He used to lift weights for an hour. Now he does these 15-minute combo workouts with the bands, combining aerobic activity and resistance training. He notices a huge pump and burn in his muscles. This is an elite level pickleball player. He's been a multiple time national champion. He noticed a huge change in his on-court performance, explosion, ability to get to balls, and he noticed big endurance changes. Previously, for Scott to get this type of crossover result, better explosion, better performance, better endurance, he'd have to aerobic train, he'd have to weight train, which would take hours and hours. Now he works out 4 or 5 days a week for 15 to 20 minutes, and he gets the crossover effect that applies to both parts of his performance. Let's look at another profound thing that happens here. The fourth change from BFR exercise occurs after exercise. Just like with high intensity exercise, most athletes are experiencing a growth hormone result. This is a study on men measuring their growth hormone shortly after exercise, and typical athletes are seeing small releases of growth hormone. As we get into the elite level athletes, they can fatigue deeper and get higher levels. But guess what happens in our athletes that can't push themselves, or rehab athletes? Many athletes, child athletes, recreational athletes, like walkers, bikers, pickleball players, are not experiencing any growth hormone, and neither are rehab athletes. Let's go back to our chart. Remember, when you put the bands on and you hit a deeper metabolic fatigue, the body senses more fatigue, more failure. The body's going to respond just like it does with more nitric oxide. It produces more growth hormone. I've reviewed 6 different studies on BFR and growth hormone. This one is profound. Look at this. Over 20 times increase in growth hormone. What does this mean? Amateur athletes, recreational athletes will experience a growth hormone surge they never thought was possible. Elite level athletes are going to be able to produce more growth hormone, and rehab and recreational athletes who are not getting any growth hormone will start getting growth hormone. And let me tell you this. When you start experiencing a growth hormone release and your athlete or your recreational athlete or even people who are just going to go for a walk start getting growth hormone, the results are profound. Here's an example of an athlete. Emily, she is a elite level volleyball player. I'll fast forward here to show you some of the things she's doing. All we're doing with this athlete is putting the bands on. She's doing her normal training, but what's happening? She's fatiguing deeper. So think any athlete, any athletic movement, throwing, hitting, running, jumping, put the bands on, you fatigue deeper. You get more nitric oxide, more growth hormone. Emily, an elite level volleyball player, added 6 inches to her vertical leap. Absolutely incredible. Here's another type of athlete, a world champion USA team martial artist, Vinny. What did Vinny do? Vinny simply put the bands on and did all of his training. Here he is sparring. What's happening when he's punching and kicking and doing his special type of training? He's getting crossover, more recruitment, more slow twitch, more fast twitch, and then deeper recruitment of fast twitch, which means an elite level world champion noticed a big change in his strike strength. Now, why is this so profound? BFR is showing us that athletes who have reached personal records or plateaus, when they simply put the bands on and do their same training, they get that crossover recruitment, that deeper fatigue, and they move personal records. They move plateaus that were typically unattainable. This is so profound. Here's a baseball player, a pro baseball player hitting off the tee. Tony would tell you he lifted weights, he hit with the bands, and he ran with the bands. And he will tell you he's hitting the ball deeper and further than he ever has. Why? He's fatiguing deeper in the action of hitting baseball. Same thing happened to that 13-year-old baseball player down in Texas. His coach noticed the ball was coming off the bat. It sounded different, and it happened fast. Why? This 13-year-old kid who's in the batting cage is simply hitting with the bands on, and he's hitting a deeper fatigue point than was possible before, and he's adapting and getting faster results. How about rehab? Well, it just makes sense, doesn't it? Less load, with less load, we can be safe. And now in a rehab athlete, we can get more recruitment and deeper fatigue. Here's an ACL athlete who's a baseball player. He was back on the field in less than 5 months. Doing this typical ACL rehab, what's happening? He's hitting a deeper fatigue point. When you hit deeper fatigue, 2 wonderful things are going to happen for these athletes who are going through rehab. Actually, 3. Number 1, they're going to get more nitric oxide, better blood flow, faster healing. They're going to get the pump. Number 2, psychological benefit. When an athlete who's down or injured or rehabbing feels a pump or a burn, it gives them a psychological high because they know they are improving and adapting. And number 3, typical rehab athletes who are getting no growth hormone, it's obvious what will happen when they start getting a growth hormone release because BFR has been implemented into their rehab. They're going to heal faster, and that's exactly what we've seen all across the country with all of the wonderful athletic trainers and physical therapists and orthopedic rehab centers that have implemented BFR. Congratulations to all of you. We are absolutely changing the game on outcome for athletic rehab. Finally, a peer review done in the Journal of Sports Medicine Physical Fitness, published in PubMed. They did a peer review of 30 studies. And here's what 28 of the studies concluded. There was improved strength. There was improved hypertrophy in muscle. There were promising reports on improvement in aerobic capacity. But look what else they noticed. Positive impacts on bone health, which we don't have time to talk about here. If you want to learn about the impacts that BFR can have on bone health, like osteoporosis, make sure you reach out to us at support@b3sciences.com and let me send you the study. Non-exercised limbs showing gains in strength. Again, didn't have time to talk about it. If you'd like to learn about how we can improve people who have limbs, arms or legs that can't do BFR, but we can put BFR on the other limbs, email me at support@b3sciences.com. It's already been concluded. And investigations after BFR showed no increased risk of thrombosis or clotting. This is profound scientific breakthrough. And now, why BFR bands? Well, if you start to research BFR bands, there's 3 types of bands out there. You've got these straps and wraps. I can tell you these are dangerous. They're like tourniquets. They put friction on nerves. None of the world-class athletes, none of the top Olympic doctors, none of the NFL training rooms or pro team training rooms are putting these dangerous and what I call barbaric tight strap rubber bands on their bodies. Enough said, you shouldn't do the other. Next, single chamber air bands. Think about this. When you put a single chamber on, which is all of the air bands out there except B3 bands, it's like putting a complete squeeze around your arm, or imagine putting an inner tube around your arm and pumping it up. It's just like a blood pressure cuff. It can be uncomfortable. If it's pumped up too high, it can cut off blood flow, and hence, because it can do that, some of these devices require supervision and a Doppler to make sure blood flow is not cut off. And there's significant limitations on athletes' abilities to use these, self-apply them, and reuse them safely. Again, huge shout out to Dr. Jim Stray-Gunderson and his partner Sean, who came up with an absolute breakthrough to lead the BFR world, the multiple air chamber design of the B3 bands. This was so profound, and I can't thank these 2 guys enough, because when you pump it up, it's not a complete squeeze. It's like a bunch of fingers pushing around your arms and legs, which means you can't cut off blood flow. You can't put unnecessary or dangerous friction on nerves as they move back and forth through there, and you can't cause compression type injuries from using the bands. That makes it safe. What else does it make? It makes it easy to use. So when you compare the real bands out there that are being used by training rooms, you're in the $400,000 to $5,000 price range. Guess whose bands are at the bottom of that price range? You guessed it, B3 bands. I believe they're the safest. Dr. Jim would agree, because they cannot occlude blood flow, which means they don't need supervision. You don't need a Doppler to measure blood flow, which means anybody can put these on, self-apply them, take them out in the gym. And guess what else? The B3 bands are the only ones out there, unless you spend some expensive amount of money with the Japanese company. Ours are waterproof. And because of the neoprene layer in today's world, ours are the only ones I've seen that you can easily and effectively sanitize for multiple use. Now, add to that all of the support systems I've built in our company for our athletic community. Every athlete, young, old, professional, Olympic, recreational, will be assigned a personal BFR coach, and we will send you a strategic program. And if you have special needs, you want to jump higher, you want to be more explosive on the court, you want to hit the golf ball further, you want to throw the football further, you want to lift more weight, we will design a personalized strategic program for you. I know of no company doing that. We provide support and guidance. an online athletic community, and we're the only one out there I know that has a 30-day guaranteed money-back program. If you don't love the bands, I don't care what condition are, when you send them back, just contact us in 30 days, full money-back guarantee, along with a 12-month warranty. And just like all the other benefits, I know of no other company that's supporting the athletic community in a way we are, with an expanding video library like this one. Assistance with strategic performance protocols, assistance with protocols for rehab, a professional online Facebook group, which is private for athletes, coaches, trainers, doctors, and our certified coaches to share pictures and techniques with. We even do online training for athletes, coaches, and trainers. We have recently released a BFR certification course, which will train you to become a BFR certified B3 coach for use of our bands, so that you can be the expert out there for using B3 bands. That's available to everyone, including coaches and trainers. Well, I think you can see, first of all, my level of excitement, and it comes from what I have seen in all these different levels of athletes, and we have just begun to touch the surface. But what I'm more excited about is you have watched this presentation, and you're either an athlete or you're a trainer or a coach, and you're going to be able to take your game to a new level. I call it the B3 level, or you're going to be able to help athletes get to a new level, or what we call the B3 level. Get back to the person who referred you. If you're on our website to get started, simply go click on the test drive button and choose your option for getting started and getting your B3 bands. Within 24 hours, we will have you plugged in, have your bands on the way to you, send you your get started videos, and we'll even begin writing your strategic athletic program to take you to a new level. Thanks for watching.